Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today, we finna react the truth about Jodeci Part 1, their unsung music story. Without further ado, let's get right into it, shall we? Did Devontae last,
Unnecessary, but why don't we start here and introduce ourselves?
We did Devontae last Friday, so we'll start off with,
Mr. Dowd,
we're getting into Jodeci now. Because why not?
Sugar and JoJo is looking at
Casey!
Forever, my lady, the one for me, holding me close, she's all I need.
Jodeci was formed in 1989 by two sets of brothers, Casey and JoJo, real names Cedric and Joel Haley, and Devontae Swing and Mr. Dalvin, also known as Donald and Dalvin the Great. All four members grew up in church and began as gospel singers. The Haley brothers were in a group, Little Cedric and the Haley Singers, and the De Greats were in their own gospel duo. Casey's girlfriend at the time, who was in a gospel girl group, introduced the brothers. They worked together for a couple of years before finally securing a recording contract. The group's name, Jodeci, combines the names of all four members. Casey and JoJo provided the main vocals, while Devontae and Mr. Dalvin were the writers and producers. Devontae once travelled to Minnesota to audition for Prince prior to joining the group. In 1991, they signed their first deal with Uptown Records. Sean Combs was the AR executive at the time. He embraced their style, which was an edgy street image, quite different from the clean-cut boy band image that was popular at the time. They had tattoos, wore leather jackets, and even ski masks.
We saw what we saw, but it's hard for us to convey that to Andre Harrell and Uptown, because R&B was the suits, the sequin suits, and the routines and the choreography, and that wasn't us. And we had our own way. We wanted to be street. We wanted to be, like the homeboys on the corner, so to make people want to listen to us, like not be just cool and just stiff. And he translated that to Andre and to Uptown. Like, I see where they're going, and we kind of put on the shoulders and risked everything from him being an intern to actually working into Uptown, because he believed in what we believed in.
Mr. Dalvin worked with Al B. Shaw to create their signature R&B New Jack Swing sound for their first album, Forever My Lady. They released their first single, Gotta Love, in 1991, but it wasn't until their second single,
which I'll say this, their first song wasn't bad. It was just, it sounded like what everything was on the radio. It sounded like everything else that was on the radio at the time. That was the problem. I think that's what the record labels didn't understand. Like, everything that sounds the same ain't good, because you're oversaturating the market. So I'm not gonna say that their first single was bad. It wasn't bad. It was actually a pretty dope song, but it just sounded like everything that was on the radio at the time. Like, everything was New Jack Swing around this time frame. So it was like you just throwing another stick in there, and it's not gonna stick. And that's why that first single didn't stick, and it didn't do so well, because it sounded just like everything else. It was a good song, but it sounds like everything else right now. So it's like, why bother listening to it? And I got this song over here that's a lot better. But when they drop Forever My Lady, boy.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
the title track, Forever My Lady, that they were brought into the mainstream. The single reached number 1 in the R&B charts and was well received. The opening lyrics were somewhat controversial, as the guys were barely out of their teens at their first album was well received, reaching number 1 on the R&B charts and number 18 on the Billboard charts. 2 years later, in 1993, they released their second album, Diary of a Mad Band. It reached number 3 in the Billboard charts and number 1 on the R&B charts. It had classic singles such as Cry For You, Feeling and What About Us. By this time, the New Jack Swing...
Fiending, ma'am? I think that's what you meant to say, fiending. No, there was plenty of bangers on that second album, I'm not gonna lie. Out of all their albums, their second album was their best album. And that's rare when your second album is better than your first album. That's kind of rare in today in the music industry, because normally your first album is your best album, but these niggas managed to take it a step further on their second album, man. Their second album, hands down, is their best album. Too many bangers, too many ballads. Second album was the best, without question.
Sound was outdated, but they still had their signature sound of deep 8-part harmonies. Casey's rich baritone vocals were beautifully balanced by JoJo's softer tone. They incorporated more of a hip-hop vibe and collaborated with rappers such as Redman. It was also the world's introduction to the work of Missy Elliott and Timbaland, who worked for Devontae as producers for the album. They became artists in their own right just a couple of years later. The album also included their most successful single, Lately, a cover of the Stevie Wonder classic. It reached number 3 in the Billboard Hot 100, and Devontae's arrangement and production of the song was critically acclaimed.
Strangest feeling. Oh yeah.
With no vivid reason here to find.
This is the song that Martin came out to.
Jodeci's success continued in an industry where second albums usually flop. It went on to go double platinum and was more successful than their first. However, the group also experienced some serious, tough times at the height of their careers. One night, while waiting for Devontae to show up for work, the guys received a call telling them that he had been robbed at gunpoint in his own apartment. Thankfully, Devontae survived the attack.
There was a situation where Devontae got robbed at gunpoint in his home. Mm-hmm. How bad was that situation?
It was at first it happened on my birthday.
Okay.
And we didn't know anything about it. They threw him a surprise birthday party. He was working on Let's Be Alone, one of the songs on the Diary of a Mad Band album. And we was waiting on Devontae, waiting, and it started getting late. And everybody in the studio waiting on Devontae. We kept calling. And it was like, something ain't right, man. He just wouldn't not show up or come to the studio or something. So, you know, our manager called the studio was like, no, everybody get to Devontae's house. You know, somebody just broke in. But we didn't even know the severity of the situation. And, you know, they broke in his house, tried to kill him.
Oh, they tried to kill him?
Well, man, they split his skull open.
Oh, so they pistol whipped him?
Yep, tied him up. Man, he was fighting back. He bit one of the guy's fingers off.
Wait, he bit one of the guy's fingers off?
Yeah, I mean, it was bad. So, and, you know, that was it.
Many believe Devontae was never the same again after the attack. Till this day, only he truly knows what went on that night. Some suspected Suge Knight to be involved, but according to Mr. Dalvin, the robbery occurred before Jodeci were ever associated with Death Row Records. At this time, Casey was in a tumultuous relationship with Mary J. Blige. They performed together and had great chemistry on stage. They seemed perfect for one another. They were together for 12 years, but the relationship was plagued with allegations of drug use, assault, and cheating. Casey was the bigger star when they first got together, and he simply wasn't ready to settle down. When she announced their engagement, he responded by denying they were even together. Speaking about the relationship, Casey said, "We had fun, man. We was young. It just exploded. I'm not gonna lie, I did some things. She couldn't take that heat." Mr. Dalvin also had a high-profile relationship with T-Boz of TLC.
You couldn't got no high.
It is believed they dated for 4 years in the early 90s.
I want y'all to know that this ain't me. This quality ain't on me. Look, I got it at 720p. It's on her. She downloading shit. She just clicking on shit and downloading shit. You telling me you couldn't get no high resolution of these pictures? These pictures on the internet, they not in high resolution. That's on her. That's not on me, y'all.
We get to see them have a wedding in the music video for Love You for Life. In the TLC biopic, Crazy, Sexy, Cool, it is alluded that Dalvin cheated on T-Boz. Till this day, they remain friends and were reunited at the 90s R&B Rewind concert in California this year. Dalvin took to Instagram to say they were friends for life. Stay tuned for part 2, where I break down Jodeci's third album and delve a little deeper into their alleged troubles with drugs and alcohol, and why there was never a fourth album. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss it.
Alrighty, man. That's just gonna about do it for this one. We'll do part 2 some other time. This is definitely one of the most goated R&B groups to ever fucking exist. They changed the landscape of R&B. If we being honest, the landscape of R&B would not be where it is today if it wasn't for Jodeci. You gotta remember, before, I mean, there was Bobby Brown, but even Bobby Brown was still in that niche of clean cut R&B guys, even if he was a little raunchy. But yeah, when Jodeci came into the game, everything changed. So from the R. Kellys to the Ushers to the Genuines, the Marios, the Omarions, the B2Ks, the Chris Browns, those guys have to thank Jodeci for changing the landscape of how R&B artists should present themselves and how they put their music out. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta thank these guys for what they did and how they changed it. They're the most influential group by far. It's not even up for debate. These dudes really changed R&B for the better. But anyways, that's just gonna about do it for this one, man. I'll see y'all in the next video. Till then, peace out.